neighborhood beautification. That's very important to Detroit. It's very important to block clubs, organizations, and people who live in the community. We got started with 2 lots and a vision of a treehouse center. Because if we can take these blighted lots, Detroit give us grants to be able to do something with them that the community wants, it's a plus because we're bringing our neighborhoods back to where we want them to be, where they should be, all because I live in Detroit.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in a home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. My name is Saeed Khan, and what a launch after Labor Day. We have the volatility of election season. We have the volatility of college and pro football, but somehow or the other, we're missing the volatility of hurricane season. I guess something had to give.
Stock market. The stock market.
Then there's the stock market as well. Thank you for reminding me about that, Nancy. Well, we are joined with by veteran journalist Nancy Derringer. We have 2 out of our 3 esteemed lawyers, Bill Seikaly and Joel Sklar, pollster Ed Sarpolus, labor and community activist Barb Ingalls, and of course, co-founder of Deadline Detroit, Allan Lengel. We will, Bill, go ahead and talk about that. In fact, you know what? Let's go ahead and, since it is football season, I'm going to go ahead and call an audible. Let's talk about what happened in Georgia. Yet again, in America, another school shooting, barely days or weeks after school has begun. In Georgia, we have 2 confirmed teachers or adults who've been killed, 2 children who've been killed, and close to a dozen others who were hospitalized with injury. 14-year-old Colt Gray is a suspect who has been arrested, and also his father has been arrested for a myriad charges, including involuntary manslaughter, for the allegation that he gave his son an AR-15 assault rifle for Christmas last year, which is allegedly the weapon that was used in this particular shooting. Nancy.
After he gave it to him, after he had been reported making threats of a school shooting. So it's almost worse than the Crumblies. It's like you think the Crumblies pegged the needle. They did not. So this Mr. whatever the hell his name is did this. So.
Well, I mean, I think it begs an interesting question about the Crumbly factor. Do you think that Attorney General Dana Nessel and the Oakland County prosecutors who brought the charges here in Michigan, was this, as we had talked about back when the Oxford shooting case was unfurling, was that the precedent that other states are following now? Bill or Joel, you're definitely nodding.
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, I think what Karen McDonald did was, somewhat, it was novel. It was a theory that worked and a theory that stuck. I think it does set some precedent for parental responsibility for children, especially when you give them weapons that can kill, mass destruction, an AR-15 for a kid that's clearly psychiatrically troubled, who's been accused of threatening schools before. I think that there is a precedent now, and I'm glad. Anything that can parents giving children weapons is a good thing. Anything that can deter a child from killing a fucking schoolmate is a good thing. So I'm glad that these prosecutions are happening. I'm glad that there's parental responsibility. I wish there was strict liability civilly for the parents. And I wish the gun companies would also have liability for peddling arms of destruction to children, and to people who shouldn't have them. It's just insane to me.
Yeah, but Joel, you forget one thing. JD Vance says we just have to learn to live with it.
Wasn't that outrageous?
Yeah. So that's the parents who lost their children, to their husbands,
I think you're too cynical. He was simply quoting the title of a 1980s sitcom when he said that this was a fact of life in America. I know you're looking for different strokes, but you're not going to get it here. But in seriousness, I mean, the glib way that or at least half the Republican ticket is even talking about this. Ed, how do you think that this is going to play? Because after all, you do have quite a few members of at least the Republican Congressional Caucus, including Marjorie Taylor Greene from the great state of Georgia, who were wearing AR-15 lapel pins to show their solidarity.
Well, if you look at the polling in Georgia, okay, when you're looking to Georgia, anything that you can move the numbers by 1 or 2 points is fantastic. Okay, and that's what they have the reason to talk about, especially when you look at Harris and them are going out county, not in the cities, into the rural areas. That tells you they're seeing movement. So anything like this helps, because remember, this is a state that prides itself. So I think this was a positive thing, not for the families and the people that died. I think adds another notch that you think Georgia may be flipping a little bit to Kamala Harris.
Okay. Allan.
I was going to say an assault weapon was apparently used. And again, there's such people defending it. And Joe Biden has been trying, and Kamala Harris trying to ban these assault weapons. And people don't think it's a big deal, but it can make the difference between 10 or 20 people getting killed. And they are still so easily accessible. And the father said that he had guns, that he would supervise his son, but bullshit, and that his son didn't have unfettered access to the guns. Well, apparently he did, So
because the father said, "Don't fucking touch that gun." Hey. Yeah, that's what constitutes control.
But that statement was made prior. That was during the investigation about a year ago.
Right.
Yes. The purchase happened this past Christmas, and he bought him this AR. Can I circle back to
Merry Christmas?
I don't disagree with what Joel said about McDonald. I thought McDonald was courageous in bringing the charge against the Crumblies, and but attorneys, and I want to challenge my friend Steve Fishman, who is apparently in love with a golf ball today instead of us. I want to challenge these theories have been out there for many years. The idea, it's unfortunately, I wish there were parental responsibility laws, but he's been charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder and 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. He did an act which foreseeably created these deaths. These theories have been around for a long time. Attorneys like Steve and me and a lot of other people have been advocating that they use these laws, and people have been hesitant. Karen McDonald had the courage to do it. She was successful, and I think that gave the folks in Georgia the courage to move forward, and I think you'll see more of it. But let us not kid ourselves. Just like JD Vance was wrong when he said we just have to live with this, charging the parents afterwards is not the effective means of preventing this. The effective way is getting rid of those damn guns.
It's punishment, not prevention.
Right.
Yeah, but I would speculate, shall we say, that this could be the first pebbles in an avalanche, that it starts with charging the parents. Sooner or later, some parents groups are going to say, whoa, wait a minute. This is not entirely our fault. What about the gun? And eventually, maybe it could reach as high as the gun manufacturers and personal liability for these things. But if it starts with just making a few parents who are a little too lackadaisical in controlling their own weapons, to take more affirmative steps to do so, a safe where the kid doesn't have the combination, whatever you have to do, then it can only be a good thing. And I hope that when the history is written, somebody notes that it started with a Democrat. That's
look at as Allan's family and Joni's family say, from your mouth to God's ear on that one.
All right.
So Barb. When the father went to the school a year ago when the kid made the initial threats, they were talking about hunting rifles. They were specifically saying that there were hunting rifles in his house, and they were hunters. And I know a million people with hunting rifles in their house. And it's a different thing. After it happened, as you said, at Christmas time, he was given an AR-15. The Washington Post has a and this is me that bitches about the media, but they did a photo essay of the results of a shooting by an AR-15, and they did not show the flesh wounds, but they showed everything.
That was an amazing project. It was more than a photo essay. It was like a digital presentation with animations and videos and still photos. And did it win a Pulitzer, Allan? You keep closer track of this stuff than I do.
I can't remember.
I think it won a lot of awards, and it was, if you page through that thing, it was optimized for phones and for laptops and desktops. It was really an amazing piece of
I looked at it again yesterday because I'm a human, you know, I'm a woman that lives in the world. I have little nieces and nephews that are going to school and if you talk to anyone who's been through a school lockdown simulation, what they do, they scare the living fuck out of these kids.
Yes.
What they do, and the teachers. One of my nieces was a grade school teacher, and she said she shook for hours afterwards. And we're doing that. You know, they can't read a book. They can't read To Kill a Mockingbird. You know, they can't read these things. They can't have a drag queen. You know, but this kid had full access to a rifle. You can't use it for hunting because it's going to blow the living shit out of a deer. You know, this is an illness in this country that I cannot wrap my mind around. I can't. This is not even about guns anymore. This is about allowing people to slaughter like in wartime.
Yeah.
Well, Barbara, I really like what you said, because when I was a kid, I remember getting under the desk because there was a nuclear bomb.
Yeah, the duck and cover drill. Yeah.
And that traumatized me.
Yes. Much more scary.
Well, Ed, I think I was actually more worried about the gum underneath the desk that might kill me. That was always the scare. I mean, I figured I could survive. I could survive an ICBM, but that gum was just too much. Well, I mean, but Nancy, you mentioned this idea that it could more of these could then become more pebbles to the avalanche. At the same time, is there not then the fear that parents, or at least the response by school districts, would be to arm teachers or to have more security as the alternative, because politically going after gun manufacturers might be a little bit too much?
I know that is the stupidest fucking idea I've ever heard. I mean, if you trust no, I'm not talking about that.
Not mine.
If you trust a teacher to somehow like have the presence of mind to first keep his or her classroom safe, then find the weapon that's in the classroom, which has to be under all kinds of locks anyway. Let's say she's smart enough to punch the code in, then get the weapon out, then somehow, take aim against. That's just, and we're paying these people $40,000 a year. Are you crazy?
And want to pay them less.
Nancy, I don't know, Nancy, when's the last time you were below the 38th parallel in America, but those teachers carry holsters.
Okay, so they're going to have it on there. Yeah, what a great idea. But
I know when I was representing the lobbying for the Michigan Education Association, their chief lobbyist, teachers didn't want to deal with that. Okay, being prepared how to use a gun, where it's at. Yes, there wasn't like total elimination. And number two, they talked about there were counselors in the school, there were security systems set in place. So, all that stuff did not work.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, that's right. Because the classroom door locks automatically from, so you can only open it from the inside. Right. So he was only able to kill 4 people. A success, only 4 people died. It's insane. But the thing that, well, I don't know, like Barb, I'm grief-stricken.
That's my niece who wrote that today, and this is my great niece.
Okay, you want to read it?
And I'm just getting chills.
Why don't you read it?
Yeah.
Harper's 10, but she's been doing this since kindergarten. My child shouldn't have to learn how to fight back a shooter. This year, she was taught how to fight back. She had active shooter drills before fire drills this year.
Yeah.
My beautiful little niece who reads a book a day
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm going to
What they
cry.
have to do.
I mean, Barb, what made my blood turn cold was reading the text messages of kids contacting their loved ones, and just a sort of matter-of-fact way that they were saying, we've got a shooter, I love you, and this might be it. So just wanted to tell you,
like being on the plane going down. This is something. This gun insanity is something that people are talking about here. We've had an incursion of coyotes in Grosse Pointe, and they've killed a couple of dogs. Which is in front of their owners. I mean, this has been they're getting pretty bold. So whenever this happens, these people take to Facebook and they talk about how, well, I got my Smith & Wesson out. It's not the way they talk in Grosse Pointe. Well, I have a Smith & Wesson. Anyway, so they're talking about how they're going to shoot and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, dude, you live in a densely populated area. What makes you so sure that you are such a crack shot, such an Annie Oakley with that sucker, that you are only going to hit the coyote and there isn't going to be one stray that's going to fly across your neighborhood into some baby's room, and hit him in the crib? I mean, that's just, it blows my mind.
I know, but Nancy,
person.
But Nancy in Grosse Pointe, you also probably think you're talking about 8 Mile Road and these coyotes are trying to get people across the 8 Mile line to come and live there.
Exactly. Wrong coyote. Next thing you're going to be worried about anvils made by acting.
Real quick comment.
I want to circle back to your comment about it might be too much to go after the gun manufacturer. Look, I know that there's a large section of the population that supports guns and especially hunting weapons. I think that the number of people who are really supporting AR-15s, automatic weapons of any sort, in the hands of people is really shrinking. And I think that there is an appetite to hold manufacturers accountable.
There's a couple of plants have actually closed down. There's more gun operations are going out of business. So, I mean, it's not eliminated, but there is a reduction.
Right. Yeah. Can I just make a quick comment? Sure. Real quickly, is that I found it interesting when they interviewed some of the students. There was a girl that sat next to this kid in school, and she said, I can describe his face. I can describe him at all. He was just there. Yeah. There's something going on where children are being almost disenfranchised from childhood. These, teaching children even about, how to survive a shooting, in a sense, conditions the children to expect it, to believe it's going to come. For those who may be completely screwed up, maybe a way to circumvent it. So, I found it amazing that there is a phenomenon where children are invisible, and where nobody pays attention to them, nobody gives a shit about them, and the way they reclaim their power is doing something abhorrent. Trump called this kid a monster. He's not a monster. He's a child who has some serious psychiatric. Right, the 14-year-old boy who has serious psychiatric issues, and we have to figure out what's going on with this generation. They've lived with my son lived with Columbine, 9/11, school shootings. There are traumas to this generation, many behind us, obviously, that we never experienced and that have shaped this generation. And I think we have to look at that because it has been trauma on trauma.
And a lot of it is boys.
Yeah, but I also think that goes back to what Nancy talked about earlier. We're paying teachers less and less. People are scrambling to get out of education. I taught for 5 years before I went to law school. Some of the best years of my life. It was an honorable profession. We're chasing competent people out. We're not paying them. We as a society are abandoning any sense of support for this generation. So we really shouldn't be surprised when these things happen, Joel. I agree with everything.
Joel, the number of high school graduation parties I went to this summer, and kids, on the one hand, they'd graduated, they were happy, they were relieved, they were looking forward to going to college. But the number of them who saw it as a checkered flag to simply surviving high school without a shooting. It was just really sobering to hear that.
I think the other difference that's going to be is the fact is when I did a study of Detroit and Southeast Michigan, it was only the inner city kids talked about guns. Now it's in suburbia. Okay, so
exurbia.
Now that's why it's going to be changed. In fact, this is like 10 years ago. I interviewed like 2,000 kids between 7th grade and 10th grade. And it's usually the inner city. We're the ones talking about guns. We've seen some of that. Now it's suburbia or exurbia. So this is going to change the impact on the politics.
Oxford was exurbia, and so is this little town in Georgia. It's basically the most far-flung part of Atlanta.
50 miles from Atlanta or something like that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I think between Atlanta and Athens. Yeah, Alan.
I mean, I think it's interesting. I mean, when I was in D.C., I was working, helping some of the high school papers in the inner city there. Every high school in D.C. had metal detectors. Not to say that a kid couldn't run out to his car, walk up to the metal detectors with an AK and just wipe out everyone right there. But there's kids like the Oxford shooter. If there had been a metal detector there, he would not have been able to bring his gun into the school like that. So there's such a resistance out there because people don't want to be inconvenienced, but it's routine in a lot of the inner city schools in Detroit and elsewhere. And here in Georgia, there was not a metal detector, and there seems to be a resistance. And that's not the answer, but I think you have to do everything, including going after the guns, the manufacturers, but also, security.
Yeah. It's a complicated problem, and complicated problems never have a simple solution. So
well, and just simply dismissing it as a fact of life is unhelpful.
Well,
he's a robot. I'm convinced that guy's not a human. Anyway.
So I think I read somebody made some quip online that it's like JD Vance was like grown in a lab where they make 80s teen movie villains. He really was.
And Pat Boone was on drugs.
He's kind of like Chet in Weird Science,
Exactly. Yes.
Well, I mean, I wonder that when he looks through the scope, if he gets some of the eyeliner stuck on the scope of his gun. Well, here in Michigan, polling is showing that in fact Vance is hurting Trump, while at the same time it looks like Tim Walz is helping Kamala Harris on the ticket. Ed, how is that looking? And is this a trend or is this a blip?
No, actually, this is one of the reasons why they actually picked him, because he does reflect the Midwest. His looks, his manners, his communication. He understands.
You mean Walz? You mean Walz, not Vance?
Walz, yes.
Okay.
Yes. No, he actually fits that demographic. Okay, and the fact that he's older white, not young white or very old white. Okay, he fits like the typical. Because remember, Michigan's getting older, so he looks like what you might see in Oakland County, Macomb County, and he also. Matter of fact, what's so funny is, despite him now, he also looks like a military person. Okay,
right?
Because
he looks like a coach. He looks like
Bob.
Bob.
He does. By the way, just one point of clarification: Tim Walz is younger than both Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise, respectively.
Wow.
That's like the Wilford Brimley rule,
Oh, physical evidence to the contrary, by the way.
Wilford Brimley was like 40 when he made Cocoon.
Cocoon.
He was just born to be an old guy. So there.
Well, he was the baby among all of them. So, that meant that he must have been in his 30s when he did the China Syndrome. So, because he was in that as well.
Speaking of polls, we do have a video here.
Please have a seat, everybody. You're very kind. Welcome, one and all, to The Late Show. I'm your host, Stephen Colbert. Ladies and gentlemen, swing states remain very, very close. And an average of 15% of likely voters say they have not firmly decided their choice. How is that possible? Honey, I can't decide. For vacation, should we go to the Four Seasons Resort in Anguilla or Dan's Shed O'Marmots?
Dan's Shed O'Marmots.
Well, I mean, I guess apropos of that is some of the new reporting that Kamala Harris just killed it on fundraising over the last, basically since she announced. Outgunning Trump by a country mile. And it seems as though Trump's campaign is conceding certain states and even pulling out, much to the peril of those who are whistleblowers about it, including New Hampshire. Is this changing the map?
It is. It actually is changing the map. As a matter of fact, what's happening is that now Trump is not guaranteed the Electoral College because North Carolina is now in play. When you got North Carolina, that's so important that North Carolina is in play to the fact that Trump has to change the map. because if Harris gets Georgia and they lose North Carolina, Harris might be able to afford to lose Pennsylvania. Depends what happens out west. So it is already changing the maps. That's why you see the money shifting around. That's why he's spending so much time in Michigan. It's like once a week you're seeing Trump or somebody in the state, because he can't lose Michigan if he's going to lose North Carolina.
And what do you make? We're seeing everything. We see like Newsweek reported Trump's having a surge. Then we see Washington Post has something showing that Harris is moving. Keeps inching forward. What are you making? Like, let's take Michigan first. What's going on?
Well, here's the problem, because each pollster does not have a consistent methodology of doing the surveys. Some are doing voters, some are doing active voters, some doing likely voters, and some of those have already, they're already committed to voting. So you have to look at how the sample was drawn and who they're going after. Okay, the closer you get to likely voters, because they'll be much older, that's where Harris does the best. Those who are much younger, when you're looking at voters, then it gives more light to Trump. Also, the fact depends where are they waiting. So it's a lot of about times the methodology. And the other thing, the fact most pollsters don't know what to do with Kennedy. They don't know what to do with Cornel West. They don't know if they leave him in or leave him out. And so you actually got to look at methodology and how it was weighted and what candidates do they list on the list.
What's your sense, though, in Michigan?
I would sense is that it's we're getting at a point now that if this might be the first time the Democrat wins Electoral College with less than a popular vote of 3 to 4 points, because it's getting very close because of the number of states being involved. Because typically Democrats don't win the Electoral College unless they win by 4 points or better. But we're seeing some shifts here in the fact that might change that dynamic.
So speaking of RFK Jr., a judge has sided with Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson in keeping RFK Jr.'s name on the Michigan ballot. And I think we have a video regarding our Bobby too. I know.
I don't think that Vice President Harris is a worthy president of this country. I think we need to have a president who can give an interview, who can articulate a vision, who can put together an English sentence.
You know what? The human phlegm ball is right. We do need a president who can put together an English sentence. We need a president who can put together an English sentence like this guy.
Democrats decided to shield and shelter criminal. In Venezuela, did you just see Maduro? Venezuela. We see this spirit in the men and women who selfless is it. We have made America strong again. The Hamas terrorist invasion. When they gaze upon Yosemite, you know,
So I saw this morning that Trump was.
He's trying to do one of these, like do a Rosie the Riveter. With his flabby arm under his giant suit. Go ahead.
I saw a clip this morning of him at a rally in Minnesota, and there were 2 Somalis standing behind him. I'm like, you guys not get the memo that you were on the travel ban? But I mean, that's beyond chutzpah. I mean, I know Fish would be here to give us the corrective on the Yiddish, but yeah. But speaking of that,
you don't know that he been paid to some people stand behind him. This guy, they may have been paid money to be there.
Well, I mean, I guess I would go ahead and
he's done it before.
I'd pretend. I guess for the right amount of money, I'd pretend to be Somali too. But there has been reporting that I don't believe Trump has had any events scheduled for quite some time this week, and I don't know if that's leading up to having to prep for the debate, or the fact that he was in New York this morning at the Eugene Carroll case to try to sue for a new trial. Allan,
I was going to say it was interesting, just semi-non-sequitur here, but that on Labor Day, the Republicans were nowhere to be seen. Trump, JD Vance. I mean, it was like they conceded, okay, labor is not really for us. We're going to stay home and I'm going to go golfing or whatever, where the Democrats were. I mean, Kamala, I think people were a little disappointed. I was at the Labor Day parade. People were hoping that she would speak there. She ended up speaking hours later at Northwestern High School. And it may have been, she only spoke for, I think, 15 minutes or so. And I think the security is so she was heading off to Pittsburgh after, and there's a jazz
where
fest.
they had bulletproof glass.
Yeah, there was a jazz fest and all that kind of stuff. So maybe it was just a matter of security. It was just quick and in and out. But
I think the bulletproof glass was for Kenny G at the festival, Alan.
Kenny G was not at the Detroit Jazz Festival. I'm sorry.
They didn't make the cut.
I can tell you this: that during the Labor Day events, we had National Guard jets leaving Lansing City Airport, and it was like being in a military zone, just to cover the skies. That's how serious they were when they were.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow.
My neighbors are saying, "Ed, are we getting bombed?" No, that this is we got people of consequence in this state. They're up in the air.
Wow.
Well, poor Donald J must be fuming because the judge denied his request to move the hush money trial or case to federal court. So it looks like sentencing is imminent when it comes to that. But I think perhaps the bigger sense of betrayal he must be feeling is the fact that former Wyoming Congresswoman Liz Cheney has thrown her support for Kamala Harris. And there was reporting in Politico, I believe, a few days ago, that it seems as though not just a few in the Republican leadership would like to see 45 go down in order to bolster their chances for 2028. Thoughts on that?
I would have to agree with that because if you go back in history of our United States, at least the last 100 years, only time a party switches complete control when there's a big bombardment. It's like when Humphrey lost to Nixon, there was a complete turnover. Okay, and then we had Clinton come in. The same thing happened with the bottom line. Republicans are looking at history, and they got to purge it if they're going to want to get back control of their party.
Yeah, the ones with brains that are still functioning.
Yes,
we say.
I think this is likely to take a lot longer than.
Yes,
I agree with Ed's historical observation, but this is likely to take more than one election cycle because there's so many MAGA people are in control of either the party or state parties or sections of the party.
Look between Humphrey and Bill Clinton, that was a long time.
Right.
Plus, I think they have a couple of purges planned for the country anyway before that, Bill. So let's see. Alan,
I've got a question for everybody. When Kamala says if she's president, she would pick perhaps a Republican. Does anyone see the possibility of Nikki Haley ever accepting, or would that be too toxic for her?
I don't see Nikki Haley being offered.
Cheney is the more likely one. Cheney is probably going to be the one likely to be asked to be in the cabinet.
Or Kinzinger.
Kinzinger, right?
Yeah, Kinzinger, I can say.
I don't know. I mean, I guess that's the sort of thing that just doesn't interest me, and it's kind of boring, frankly. I mean, oh boy, we found a moderate Republican to serve in a Democratic administration. I mean, Obama did it, and maybe he felt he had to do it because he was, black, and people were freaked out about him or something. But I mean, ultimately, like, who's endorsing whom is kind of like, who would expect Liz Cheney to endorse anyone but Kamala Harris? I mean, she's obviously not going to endorse Trump. Does anybody care? Is anybody saying, oh, Liz Cheney's voting for Kamala Harris, I guess I will too? I mean, endorsements.
Mitt Romney, maybe.
I don't disagree with you generally, Nancy, though. Yeah. What's going on right now in Georgia could be different. There's now a new dust up involving Kemp and the canvassers and the electorates. And if Trump and Kemp fall apart and he leaves Trump, that could make a difference, especially in the way Ed talks about it when you're talking about only a point or two.
Well, actually, it's going to be happening in Macomb County already because of the issues like this. Macomb County is a county that is on the edges. It can split, okay? You're permanently going to lock Oakland County into the Democratic category if this happens. Remember, the Democrats are going after the margins, the outer margins, not the ones that were the legal cases, but the outer margins. These states that they're winning are going to be on the margins. They're not going to be big.
Right.
So Cheney saying something, it gives political cover for those Republicans saying, will I be kicked out of the party if I go with Harris? That's where the political cover comes in.
But Ed, it seems like strategically. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Bill.
Do you think Rogers is getting hurt by Trump? mean, Rogers is the kind of senatorial candidate that I thought would have gotten more traction than he's getting. And
he shot himself in the foot. He shot himself in the foot early on. He's got some financial problems. He's got some funny money in his campaign that's being investigated. His numbers in Oakland County is low. He's losing in areas where Trump is winning in Michigan. It's him right now. It's Rogers because of his Chinese connection, his Benghazi connection with Hillary Clinton. So
did he move to Florida?
What's so funny is why would you go from we lived in the central state of Michigan, now you're living like in Benton Harbor? Why did you go to that little corner there where Newt Rockney hung out versus in the center of the state?
Well, but I mean, he could simply be sui generis, not a likable guy. It didn't necessarily take affiliation with Trump. I mean, you also have John James, who was over in Livingston County with Trump in the bastion of the KKK. Gotta love the optics about that.
John James has got money problems right now, too.
He does because they're not funding him. Because when I did a poll over his negatives, well, Al, you know this because I did a poll with you. Right. He's got higher negatives. Right now, if the Democrats fund Carr Malinga will win. If they don't fund Carr like they did last time, Carr will lose. Right now, I've talked to Republican big donors because of the work I do nationally. They're not really happy with John James.
Right. Well, I'm going to ruin my schmuck of the week, but Distill Social says that he violated the Stock Trading Act, 143 times.
Wow. John James?
John James.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that Mike Rogers, who was an FBI agent, normally that would be something that you would promote and talk about because back in the day, but in the Republican Party, the FBI is sort of an evil agency, not to be trusted, and Trump has demonized the FBI. So he doesn't ever even mention about where when he ran for Congress, that was part of his campaign.
He used to wear a quarter in each year to be sure he looked like he was an FBI agent.
Yeah, but Allan, I think to be fair, I mean, given my own personal experience of various in the rock, scissors, paper game of agencies that surveil me, I think Slotkin's CIA affiliation is over that of Rogers' FBI affiliation.
Yeah.
And maybe if somebody who was running third party was in the Coast Guard, we would then be able to see this play out a little bit easier. Why don't we go to a commercial right now?
All right.
Hold
on a second.
Easy.
Come on, Grandpa.
Without Project Clean Slate, there is no telling where I would be right now.
It gave him back his life because once he got the felony, it seemed like life was over.
Being unemployed, being depressed, being a burden. Project Clean Slate helped wipe those things away. I can't say thank you enough. I am now able to work for a reputable airline. Detroit had my back, all because I live in Detroit.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in a home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
So it looks like there's still some rumblings about whether or not Republicans will play fair when it comes to electioneering. The ACLU of Michigan has, in fact, filed a lawsuit against a Kalamazoo County canvasser for indicating that he might not certify the election. Robert Froman, I don't believe any relation to Abe Froman, Sausage King in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, is under fire for having given an interview saying that if the election unfolds like it did in 2020, that he would be disinclined to go ahead and certify it. How big of a deal and how pervasive do you think this is going to be starting November 6th?
Well, according to our good friend Steve Fishman, who's playing golf, the Democrats have a super legal team to fight this kind of bullshit. And I sincerely hope that I'm glad that they're being aggressive about this, because I am sick of explaining to dumbass Republicans that the way the 2020 election unfolded was pretty much exactly the way people who know elections predicted it would unfold, that there wasn't any fraud, that the reason they put up they blocked the windows in the TCF Center is because Michonne Maddock and her crew of morons was banging on the windows and making it hard for people to work. And I've run out of patience, and I just feel like I can't. These people have to be confronted now before they are in a position to throw sand in the gears at a very tense time, which will be during and immediately after the November election.
We've got video.
We've got video.
We've got video about the GOP in Saline.
I'm sorry. First of all, that's Saline County, Arkansas. Okay.
Okay.
I know. I saw it. And at first, I thought it was Saline, Michigan, but Saline County, Arkansas. Which, because in Saline, Michigan, it is still that the overalls are still considered taboo after 6 o'clock. So the Haystacks Calhoun guy that got
especially after Labor Day.
Exactly.
It would have been worse if they were in white.
After tobacco cutting season, we don't wear the overalls anymore.
Now, Nancy, I have to go ahead and correct here. In Michigan, it's pronounced with a schwa. It's Saline.
Saline. Yes,
exactly.
It's
not Saline. Yes.
Not
okay.
Saline.
Let's just
Saline.
let's just get that straight.
The other thing about that is I saw that, and the longer clip is even funnier. And when the people all gather around and they're yelling, break it up, and of course everybody there is at least 50 years old. They're like two women in that crowd with functioning ovaries, and they're like they're just like yelling, break it up, and it's like, that what you were supposed to yell now is World Star. So that's the way we play this now. So but it was
actually, Nancy, those two women would be in JD Vance's boiler room, wouldn't they?
Exactly. You better let that man put a baby in you, whore.
Did somebody smoke something with Nancy before the show started?
You're on fire.
My sunburn has made me.
We're drinking some of that saline solution.
Yeah.
Oh, very good.
Saline solution.
Bill, smoking is so 80s. I mean, everything isn't edible these days.
It isn't edible.
Smooth.
A little bit closer to home, and quite a shocking development. A lawsuit alleging that the Detroit Medical Center ignored unsafe conditions that enabled some of its psychiatric patients to be sexually assaulted. It just seems as though there is no respite when it comes to the DMC and the kinds of issues that are happening. How much of a scandal is this going to be here in the Metro Detroit area?
I did a story on it, and I think look, basically there was a technician, a mental health technician, and I'm not sure exactly her duties, but she was fired. She was essentially trying to push. There was a rape of 2 psychiatric patients, and they say because of the lack of staff. And all different players. One guy snuck in the room of some woman and raped her. And then there was a couple months later, or a few months later, there was another rape involving another group of people. And this woman went, according to her lawsuit, she went to DMC. She walked in a room that was it was a lounge room, but it was also where they have security cameras and they watch them every day. And they happened to be playing it while she saw it, and she said, "You've got to tell the people you've got to, inform the family that this person's been raped. We have to report it to authority. And they basically said, shut up, we're going to take care of this. And she was fired. They claim that she breached HIPAA by seeing the videos, but the videos, she claims, were open, like people were watching it, or supervising stuff were watching it in the open. She never touched the equipment. So it's the DMC's got, look, the DMC's got, all these hospitals they're trying to save money, cutting staff, but when you have people being raped in your hospital, that's a pretty egregious thing.
But look, this speaks to a much larger issue in our society, and that is how we treat people who don't have power, and what happens. Rapes in a hospital, especially psychiatric units in hospitals, are incredibly common, far more common than we are willing to talk about. What happens with teachers being sexually active with students in school, far more common than we really talk about. What happened with Nassar, and we've begun to look at these things, but our interest in them is relatively short, and that's because there's no advocacy group. There's no one who really fights for people without power in this society when they're abused. And
I would disagree with that. I would just say that when you say people without power, that is a pretty amorphous, incredibly broad description of people. I mean, you have the Alliance for the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill. You have individual groups that stand up for the homeless, for whatever, for all these other people without power. But I mean, I don't think you can say that there's nobody that's sticking up for them. They just, when this stuff is covered up
them in these individual situations. I mean, the fact of the matter is that people who are in special ed programs in schools, people who are in, and I think that some of those advocacy groups do great things in terms of improving programming. But in terms of who protects these people from the sexual abuse and physical abuse, they're not around. They are not around. It's not happening. And we, as a society, don't get outraged by it. I'm amazed by how quickly this passes over in the news. And these kids are incredibly harmed. Look, I spoke with my client from the Charles Pugh case just the other day. Kid is still so screwed up about all of this. We abandoned these people, and these kind of rapes go on. And what do? We go after the woman for violation of HIPAA.
Yeah.
Well,
what the hell?
You may not know that I got my nursing degree at 65 because I'm an RN, but on the side.
What?
Yes.
That's incredible.
Are you serious? You're an RN?
I was tired of sleeping, so I had time to, and then be around all the young kids, But I did get my, yes, I did.
Kudos. I'm impressed, Ed.
Okay, but the point being is when you are in the hospital, there are rules on who you report to, okay? There is a chain of command that you must follow through. So the fact that she saw it does not mean she shouldn't have gone first up the food tree. She does have the right, if nothing is done.
She did. She claimed she did go to her supervisor and say, we need to report this to authorities, and we need to inform the family about it.
Okay, but she has the right, if she sees something, to report it to the police. She has that right. Now, the question is if you're trying to hide on the HIPAA thing, because there is rules in the hospital you got to follow. But if you see something and it's not being done, you have, as a nurse, you have the right to call the police.
Can I just explain what I think is happening? Is she has a whistleblower claim, or public policy, all sorts of claims. And what the defendant has to do, the employer has to produce a legitimate, non-discriminatory reason for the discharge.
Correct.
It doesn't have to be a true reason. Typically, it's not a true reason. But under what's known as the McDonnell-Douglas burden-shifting approach, which is somewhat complex, once the employer does that, then the employee, this woman, has to show that that's not real or it's not the true reason for the retaliatory action. So you're always going to get a defense from the employer that there was a legitimate reason to discharge, and once that comes under a cross-examination, you rip it apart. And that's what I assume is going to happen here.
Yep, I agree with you. But there is two ways the way you look. When I was there, I was told what to do. If I go up the food train, nothing happened, I do have the right to call something. Okay.
Well, the Workers' Protection Act doesn't require you to do anything other than contact the public body, let your employer know so they have a notice, and then they act at their peril.
Yep.
But where Bill is completely 100% right is that there really is no sexual assault is still there's no one there for you, and that's why people don't report their rapes. That's why people end up being sick for years over what happened to them. And I don't know if you guys have seen what has happened in France.
I was just about to bring that up. That is an amazing story.
Her husband, for years,
decades,
drugged his wife and paid men to rape her while she was unconscious.
Men paid him to rape her.
And filmed them.
Right. He found them on a website called whileshesleeping.com or whileshesOut.com.
She's not the only one. So what she did, which I think is so courageous, is that she's in front of the cameras. She's not doing the anonymous thing. She's like, I'm 72 years old. And this was happening up until recently.
4 years ago. Yeah.
And I mean, and it's throwing, the French are like, who have this attitude of, we take care, fraternity, but it's still, while she's talking about it, somebody is getting raped in a prison or in their bedroom or by their father, by their boyfriend, and they're not going to say a word because
by Donald Trump.
By Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And no one believes them, or they blow it off because she was wearing clothes.
Right.
Or they don't want to get fired.
Or all she wants is his money, even though she hasn't asked for a dime of it.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Well, are we waiting with bated breath for the Melania Trump memoir to be published in next month, right ahead of the election? Yes.
I composed and deleted a tweet pointing out something about Melania, and I just want you to know that is #growth, #maturity. I deleted it, but it's really, I mean, yeah, I can't wait until that piece of crap arrives. So
speaking about Celine,
working title,
Michigan.
$200. How I rose from Slovenian middle class sex work into, the first lady of the United States, the East Wing of the White House. Go ahead.
I hope she gets Yakov Smirnov to do the audiobook, because we haven't heard from him in a while. Well, speaking of Saline, Michigan, President Biden is going to be in Scioto Township this afternoon, touting his Investing in America agenda. At the same time, it's been reported that Biden is seeking to block the Japanese takeover of U.S. steel. It seems like both political parties are just rushing to be protectionist and taking that issue just off the agenda. Does that seem to be right?
I have to agree with you that, because U.S. Steel has been on my mind since I was in 1968 when I was reading the book Think and Grow Rich, and the guy from U.S. Steel, how the top 6 things you go after to win your $1 million. Okay, and also how many times has U.S. Steel been bought out by foreign countries and brought back to the United States and under different presidencies? So it's like, oh, U.S. Steel, I haven't heard for a while. Let's bring it back up. U.S. Steel is so important to parts of Michigan as well as Pennsylvania.
Interesting.
Good point. Well, I think it's also important to realize that, first of all, I thought that U.S. Steel became USX back in the early 80s.
Yes.
And second of all, you do have other countries' steel interests buying American assets, including Tata Steel from India. So it seems as though this is very selective, both in time and brand. I'm sorry?
Are they in a swing state?
Well, I mean, people could say India is just one big swing state. So there you go, Barb. All right.
Go ahead.
Let's go to our last segment there, Alan.
All righty, give me a sec.
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
All right, Joel, let's start with you today.
I'm going with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who simply advocated for more guns after the shooting, more good guys with guns, and just what we're talking about, we don't know who the hell good guys are. Everybody's got pathology. We're seeing that. That's why crazy shit happens all the time. We're human beings. We seem to forget that we're imperfect, and some of us are just sick. Some of us have, pathologies. And I think when she says shit like that, good guys with guns, it ignores the pathology. It ignores the symptomology. It ignores what's causing the symptomology. So she's my schmuck. The reality is We got to stop proliferating guns. There's too many fucking guns, and all they do is kill, and it's enough.
Yeah.
I would have said that. I would have used the analogy of a broken record, but that is only something that people who are Gen X and prior or hipsters would understand. I think she's more like a Roomba, that she's hit a wall and just simply can't.
She's in that corner where she just keeps bouncing around.
Yeah, exactly. So, Marjorie Roomba Taylor Greene. There you go. Well, actually, wasn't
somebody's going to beat her in this election?
And wasn't Roomba the name of that yoga instructor that she had the dalliance with? I don't know. Just checking. Barb.
I would go with the entire Republican Party when they wear their stupid little fucking AK-15 pins.
Right.
And there are children and teachers ripped to shreds by bullets, and all they can say is the fact of
thoughts and prayers. Thoughts
blah,
and prayers.
blah, blah, blah. Thoughts and prayers.
Mental health. Yeah, that's the other one.
So,
nobody pays for it.
Oh, that's them.
Got it. Ed.
Well, I got two quick ones. I've got Karen Ryan, Judge Ryan in Oakland County, for all those racist remarks.
Which was mentioned by one of our viewers. Thank you.
Yeah, and number two is the fact, very quickly, Peter Navarro, who's telling TV stations you must stop using the vice president's first name because it's very unique and you're giving her too much response to her name. Stop using the name. But the biggest, yes, the biggest schmuck this week is actually former President Donald Trump. You know why? All his patriots and hostages are getting out of prison.
Right.
Oh, and guess what he announced for the fourth time, and recently on a radio interview, he says, I actually did lose. We lost by a little, but we still, by a little. Now all these patriots are saying, you had us go to jail, and now you're admitting that you lost. And they're now forming groups to say, we're going to not vote for Trump. I thought that was the biggest smug anything in my life. Now you have people saying, I'm coming out against you.
And top of the table there, Ed, I believe is his favorite anti-Semite and just all around nasty guy, Nick Fuentes.
Yes,
who seems to now have a new way to describe Donald J. Trump's middle initial. It's Judas. So
it's funny because when I think was it last week or was it this week? I don't remember. The last couple weeks have just been a blur. When he suggested free IVF for all, and people who are super pro-life, who's super anti-abortion, I mean, they were like, "What? You know?" I mean, I don't think he understands his own constituency.
That's why he flipped the vote, and how he's voting in Florida.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's.
I heard that there's a 30% margin between the Republicans and the Democrats for whiplash because of that alone. So
actually, he also made a statement that he made a statement this week, or his campaign made a statement this week that Donald believes that anybody who commits a crime ought to spend time in jail.
Oh wow! Okay.
But
they're
by the way,
measuring him for an orange jumpsuit right now. So
the January 6th gala at Bedminster apparently has been postponed. So hold on to your RSVPs, folks. Nancy.
I had the French husband on my list. I had Mark Robinson, the lieutenant governor of North Carolina, on my list. Mm-hmm. But I think after yesterday, I was watching clips. Donald Trump addressed the New York Economic Club yesterday, which is kind of like the Detroit Economic Club. It's full of business machers, who show up to talk business topics, and they were asking him very detailed questions that were so far over his head it was pathetic. I think he had probably been dosed recently with Xanax or Klonopin or some kind of like serious benzo. But somebody asked him what his answer would be to the what's becoming a child care crisis. Child care costs as much as private college now. It comes at a time in your life when you're on the younger side of your earning years. Mm-hmm. And it's really becoming a problem for working parents, and virtually everyone is a working parent these days. And he gave this unbelievable answer of it was a real word salad. I mean, we use that term a lot, but this was a word salad with cheese. And he just kept talking about tariffs, and we're going to like raise trillions and trillions of dollars with tariffs. And all of that is going to be applied to childcare, and what the fuck? And so, but if you were to read, for instance, I've just got here on my phone the AP story about it, which the Detroit News ran. This is the lead. Former President Donald Trump suggested to business leaders Thursday that his plans to increase tariffs on foreign imports would solve seemingly unrelated challenges such as the rising cost of childcare in the U.S., drawing connections many economists find unrealistic. That makes it sound like he gave a serious answer. I mean, this was not a serious answer. And people are beginning to point out online and elsewhere that his brain seems to be mush. Yeah. I mean, he's babbling these weird answers, and it's up to, and these reporters are kind of, because they're stuck in their own norm of, you know, respectful coverage of somebody who was once a president of the United States, that they're kind of massaging it into something that sounds
palatable.
Yeah, normal. And it's like, at what point are we going to finally say, legitimate journalists are finally going to say Donald Trump's brain is delaminating as we speak? I mean, I just don't know how else to.
You got to take into account the fact that JD Vance said we can solve the unemployment problem for all those grandmothers out there.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's another one. But I mean, he's just
the newspapers. The newspapers were talking about cognitive issues and age as soon as Biden went away.
Exactly. And that's all they could talk about with Biden. You know, oh, he stumbled coming out of the Air Force One.
I was so happy the day my husband finally canceled the New York Times, and I felt this great sense of relief that I'm not fucking funding that anymore.
Yeah. Well, I still read the New York Times.
Well, I mean, you heard just a little smidgen about Hunter Biden, because now he switched his plea to guilty. Otherwise, that was completely off the books.
Right.
Regarding a news. Look, I think that you're being too hard. I think what Trump was really trying to do was channel Miss Teen USA South Carolina, such as the Iraq and such as the South Carolina and the South
exactly
Africa.
What he sounded like. I personally believe that United States Americans.
She almost killed herself when she became a national joke.
Yeah. Right.
But I mean, Trump was simply addressing U.S. Americans at the Economic Club of New York. So there we go. Bill.
I have three that may seem unrelated, but they are related to me. One is Benjamin Netanyahu for refusing to resolve what's going on in Gaza and get the hostages released. His blockage of this plan is inhumane and, in my opinion, offensive, and was at least partially to blame for the loss of 6 lives. Second are what's going on with the troops in both the West Bank and Gaza, and the spread of the war in the West Bank, and how the troops are treating Palestinians there. And third is JD Vance, who made this incredible statement about shootings in our classrooms are normal.
Yeah.
These things all happen because we believe there's nothing we can do about it.
Right.
And until we, the people, begin to believe that we can do something about it and demand that it be done, get rid of people like Netanyahu, demand that the Palestinians be treated with respect and dignity that they deserve just as much as the Israelis deserve. And until we say we're not going to let our kids get shot in classrooms, we're not going to allow guns into our buildings, that's going to continue to happen too. And we've got to get out of the one thing I may agree with Trump occasionally about is that we have some malaise. We don't believe that things are going to change, and therefore they don't change. Mm-hmm. So those are my three schmucks.
I would piggyback on that, Bill. Biden and Secretary Blinken for basically now what's been proven lying for Netanyahu in saying that it wasn't his fault that there was no hostage deal when obviously the evidence
absolutely. Yeah. And look, somewhere along the line, and I say this with some degree of hesitation, but somewhere along the line, either Biden or Harris are going to have to say, we ain't giving you any more weapons if this is what you're doing with it.
Yeah.
Based on
I think it's really interesting that Vladimir Putin's visiting Mongolia, and he's in fact flouting the ICC, the International Criminal Court's arrest warrant that is out for him. And there's deafening silence from the White House and even from candidate Harris. I mean, you have to wonder that if the rule of law, of international law, is getting a pass, because after all, he's not the only world leader who is under an arrest warrant right now. Netanyahu is, and it would put the U.S. in a very dubious position of calling for one to be arrested and not the other. So anyway,
we took over a yacht, though. We took away Venezuela's yacht.
Yeah.
I've got a couple here. JD Vance is getting some pushback because he's showing up on Tucker Carlson, and he's not condemning a historian, Daryl Cooper, who Tucker Carlson described as the best and most honest popular historian in the United States. Cooper had said on the show, the Holocaust was an accident of history perpetuated by a German military overwhelmed with prisoners of war. Talking about, and it's clearly documented that the Nazis had a great operation going there. And my other thing is, and this is not to toot my horn, but I will a little bit. Last night, as soon as I heard that the father was being charged in the Georgia case, I was like, oh my God, I grabbed my laptop. This is whatever time, 7:30, and did a story saying, this is, like the Oxford high school case. This is, a parent is being charged in a case. So I thought this was like a big, we're suddenly, we can't call it a trend, but it's certainly the precedent's been set here in Oakland County. And now we're seeing.
Got to be 3 to be a trend. It's a second. Yeah.
Right. It's a start. But it's a significant movement. Yeah. And I looked at the Detroit News and the Detroit Free Press, and, the Free Press ran the Free Press ran a USA Today story which made no mention of Oakland County. The Free Press, the News ran a wire story, and it wasn't until this morning that the Free Press finally, connected the two. And I thought that was kind of it's just sort of indicative of our newspapers, our media here in Detroit. I mean, the TV stations are buying out the experienced people. We're seeing second tier of reporters, and there's nothing wrong, but it's like sometimes like watching Lansing TV. Yeah. And Ed probably watches some Lansing TV there.
No, I only watch Allan Lengel.
and then, so I think it's a sad commentary that, two major newspapers don't jump on a major story that has a connection here in Michigan, and it's indicative of something more than just that story. So,
but Alan, what I'm finding with the reporters, they're calling me for historical reference. What does this mean? How does it relate? They don't have the history. They don't look up history.
Right.
Yep.
No. That's the big issue that I think is like, God, I asked, I'm getting old, so I know this shit, but I says, what are you doing? Why don't you have somebody teaching you what went on?
Right.
Alan, there's that great line in All the President's Men where, it's a phrase that you must be obviously familiar with, working on background. Where is that in this day and age?
Yes.
All right, so I've got a couple of schmucks. One is Rain Monroe, age 21, who is a self-described influencer. She had, in very, very large block letters on her forehead, tattooed the word Trump. Now she seems to be having a little bit of tattoos remorse, and is trying to feverishly crowdfund to be able to afford its removal. So there you go. I'm wondering if it's just going to leave the slightest hint of a silhouette of the word
for the rest of her life.
I want to sell her. I want to sell her her foundation makeup for the rest of her life. God.
I think it probably would be easier for her to and cheaper to add 2 more letters, E.T., and take up a musical instrument.
Yeah.
Or change the T to a CH. Chump.
But my principal schmuck of the week is Surgeon Dr. Thomas Shaknovsky of Tampa, Florida, who removed the wrong organ for Mr. William Bryan. not Mr. William Jennings Bryan, but William Bryan of Alabama, who was vacationing in Florida, goes to the emergency room and is complaining about an abdominal pain. He was assessed, and he was persuaded by both Dr. Thomas Sheknovsky and the chief medical officer, Mr. Christopher Bacani, to get surgery done immediately or face serious complications. There was the suspicion that was something wrong with Mr. Bryan's spleen. However, in opening up the abdomen, Mr. Sheknovsky, and of course, it's such an honest mistake because the spleen is like yay big and the liver is this big, removed the whole freaking liver, which of course put him in a catastrophic and immediate death.
Oh my God.
I mean,
Jesus.
I've heard of stories of people taking out the wrong kidney, left or right, but taking out an organ which is probably about 6 sizes larger than the spleen on a different side of the body with a whole lot of different vessels. Yeah.
Have you done this before? Is this his first one? Have he explored the body previously? And anybody? I mean,
I thought you were asking if it's the first time he pulled the wrong organ.
I had my
Wait a minute.
You know what they call the guy that graduates? You know what they call the guy who graduates last in his class in medical school?
Doctor.
Yeah.
But Barb, you know, I'm glad that you didn't put the word Trump on your forehead when you were doing surgery.
They didn't give me that much giggle juice. They were just cataracts.
By the way, there's a news flash. Appeals court reverses earlier ruling, says RFK Jr.'s name should be removed from the ballot.
Okay. Well, Ed, how do you
live
think
to fight again?
But that'll go up to Flemball. But that'll go up to the Supreme Court, I'm sure. And Ed, what do you think is going to happen there?
I think it'll go up to the Supreme Court because remember, they also wrote on this over one of the Carolinas too. I mean, this is not the first case, in the United States. It's going to. I'm assuming there's no way they can put a hold on it because the ballots are being printed. So I don't know what they're going to do with it. The court that another judge is going to say it's too late to change everything.
Yeah.
And they still have the majority. The Dems have the majority in the Supreme Court right now.
Yes.
Oh, let's do it.
But that means that people are going to have to go to each ballot and mark it by hand to remove his name. Oh, how could that be?
Oh no!
And Ed,
All
real quick, Ed, what's the impact of keeping his name on the ballot and taking it off? Why do you see the impact on?
Well, the point being the fact as he's off the ballot officially money wise, his name reckoning goes down. But in a tight race, a 1% taking away from Trump could impact what's going to happen in Michigan.
Yeah, I think it would more adversely impact Trump than it would Harris. By the way, just one little anecdote, if I might. I heard that there was an Islamic convention over Labor Day weekend and planned well in advance for the keynote for the community luncheon mid convention was Cornel West. Apparently, Bilal Rudolph Butch Ware, who is not only Muslim American, but also Jill Stein's running mate, showed up at the luncheon and made a huge hissy fit saying that he deserved to be on the stage as well. Even though it was a keynote, it was not a candidates forum. So, yes, it wasn't quite as violent as Saline County in Arkansas, but it could have been worse. Anyways, thank you everybody for being here for yet another wonderful week in review. Thank you, Joel Sklar. Thank you, Bill Seikaly. Thank you, Barb Ingalls. Thank you, Nancy Derringer. Thank you, Ed Sarpolus. And thank you, and with the last word, always, Allan Lengel.
Drive home safely and go Lions.
Go Lions.
Go Lions.
And happy birthday, Alan.
Thank you.
And happy birthday, Alan.
Thank you.
All right.
And see, I'm going to